There is a song in your head right now, maybe not this second, but today at some point there was. A fragment, 4 bars. A chorus you did not choose. It arrived without permission, and it will leave without warning. Around 90% of people experience this every week. Your brain is running audio you never requested. Now ask why that is possible at all. Music does not feed you. It does not shelter you. It does not warn you about predators or close a wound. On paper, it is completely useless, and yet there is no human culture without it. Not one. No society has ever been found that did not make music. 40,000 years ago, someone carved a flute from a bird's wing before farming, before writing, before cities. Someone was starving through an ice age and built an instrument. This is why. Start in southern Germany in a valley called the Ach. There is a cave there called Hohle Fels, Hollow Rock. In 2008, a team led by archaeologist Nicholas Conrad was digging in it. They were working through a layer roughly 40,000 years old, and they found 12 fragments of bone, thin, curved, broken. When the pieces were fitted together, they formed a tube about 22 centimeters long. Along its length, 5 holes, carefully cut. At one end, 2 deep V-shaped notches. That is where you blow. This is the oldest musical instrument ever found. And the material matters more than you would think. It was made from the wing bone of a griffin vulture, a bird with a wingspan of nearly 3 meters. Wing bones are hollow, light, already a tube. Whoever made this understood that. They did not invent a flute by accident. They looked at a bird's arm and saw an instrument. Now look at the holes again. They are not random. They are spaced. Modern replicas have been built and played. The instrument produces a clear scale. It can play recognizable melodies. Today, 40,000 years later. And here is the part that should stop you. This is not the first flute. It is only the oldest one we have found. Nobody carves a working 5-holed instrument on the first attempt. There were prototypes, failures, someone who taught someone else. There was already a tradition behind it, which pushes the real beginning further back into the dark, and the flute was not alone in that cave. In the same layers, archaeologists found more. Fragments of at least 3 other flutes. 2 of them were made from mammoth ivory. Ivory is solid. There is no hollow inside. To make a tube, you have to split it lengthwise, carve out the inside of both halves, then bind them back together airtight with Ice Age tools. By hand, in a cave. That is an enormous amount of work for an object that does nothing. It does not cut. It does not carry. It does not kill. It makes air vibrate. And they made several of them. In that same cave, in that same layer, there was something else. A small carved figure of a woman made of mammoth ivory. One of the oldest depictions of a human being in existence. Art and music. In one room, at one moment. That is a threshold. Now here is the problem that has bothered scientists for a century. Music should not exist. Evolution is not generous. It does not fund hobbies. Every trait costs something: time, energy, calories, risk. Traits that do not pay for themselves get deleted. So what does music pay for? Charles Darwin noticed this problem in 1871. He called music one of the most mysterious human faculties. His guess was courtship, singing to attract mates like birds. It is a reasonable guess. On its own, it is probably wrong, because human music is not mainly a solo display. In most of the world, for most of history, music happens in groups. Everyone sings, everyone claps, nobody is auditioning. In 1997, psychologist Steven Pinker put it bluntly. He called music auditory cheesecake. His argument was that cheesecake is not an adaptation. It is a byproduct. It hits systems built for other things: sugar, fat, and salt. 3 real needs exploited at once. Music, he argued, does the same thing to your brain. It tickles circuits built for language, emotion, and pattern. Pleasurable, useless, an accident. If he is right, you could delete music from our species tomorrow and nothing important would break. So let us test that, because the evidence has been piling up against it. Start with what happens in a newborn. Infants a few days old already respond to rhythm. Brain recordings show they detect when a beat is missing. Nobody taught them. It is present almost immediately, and every culture ever studied sings to its babies. Lullabies across the world share measurable features: slower tempo, higher pitch, simpler melody. In experiments, people hear a lullaby from a culture they do not know and identify it as a lullaby without understanding a single word. That is not learned taste. That is a shared code. And it works. Infant heart rates drop, distress falls. Whatever music is, it is installed before language. Now look at what it does to an adult body. Not what it makes you feel, what it measurably does, because this is where it stops being about art and starts being about chemistry. In 2011, researchers at McGill University ran a study. They scanned people listening to music they loved and measured dopamine release directly. Dopamine is the chemistry of food, sex, and addictive drugs. Music triggered it in the same reward circuits. But the timing was the strange part. Dopamine spiked before the peak moment of the song arrived. Your brain was rewarding you for correctly predicting what came next. Music is a prediction game your body pays you to play, and that explains something you have felt. The moment a song rises and your skin reacts, researchers call it frisson, musical chills. Roughly half of people report experiencing it. Measurably, your skin conductance changes and your pupils widen. It happens most often when a song breaks its own pattern. An unexpected chord, a voice entering where there was silence, a prediction made and then broken in a satisfying way. Now go further. Music changes what your body can withstand. Singing together raises your pain threshold measurably. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar tested this repeatedly. Groups sang together, then had their tolerance measured. It went up reliably across different groups. The proposed mechanism is endorphins, the body's own painkillers. Singing alone raised it too. Singing together raised it more. Rowing crews showed the same effect. Rowing alone, one level. Rowing in synchrony, higher. The physical effort was identical. The chemistry was not. Something about doing it together changes the body. Which brings us to the thing music actually does. Not entertainment, not courtship, something colder and more useful. But before that, one more piece of evidence. About 4% of people are born unable to process pitch. The condition is called congenital amusia. Their hearing is normal, their intelligence is normal. They simply cannot tell one melody from another. Many describe music as noise. Some find it unpleasant, which tells you music is not a general side effect of hearing. It runs on specific machinery that can be missing. Dedicated machinery does not usually mean accident. Here is a thing almost no other animal can do. Find a beat in a sound and move your body in time with it. It sounds trivial. It is not. Chimpanzees, our closest relatives, do not do it. Dogs do not. Horses do not. Cats certainly do not. A handful of parrots can. So can some sea lions. Nearly all of them are vocal learners like us. Species that can copy sounds they hear? Humans do it automatically. You are doing it in traffic. Put 100 strangers in a room with a drum. Within seconds, they are moving as one object. Now think about what that meant 40,000 years ago. In 2009, two researchers ran a simple experiment. One group walked around a campus in step, another walked the same route out of step. Afterwards, both groups played a cooperation game. The synchronized group cooperated significantly more. They trusted each other more. They sacrificed more for the group. They had known each other for minutes. Moving in time together rewires how you feel about strangers. Now understand the problem our ancestors actually had. Most primates bond by grooming each other. It works. It releases endorphins. It builds real trust. But grooming has a hard limit. It is one-on-one. It takes hours. It does not scale. A group of 5 is manageable. A group of 50 is not. And human groups kept getting larger. Larger groups hunt better, defend better, and survive droughts better. But they fall apart without trust. So a species needed a way to bond many people at once. Singing does exactly that. One voice can reach 30 people simultaneously. Everyone can join. Nobody has to stop working to receive it. Robin Dunbar called this vocal grooming that scales, using sound instead of hands, and group singing produces the icebreaker effect. Strangers who sing together report feeling closer, faster than groups doing crafts or writing together. So look at where humans still sing in groups today. Armies march to drums. They have for thousands of years. Not because rhythm makes you walk faster, because it makes 1,000 men behave like one animal. Sailors sang to haul ropes in unison. Field workers sang to keep pace across a whole day. Religions built their entire practice around collective sound. Stadiums, protests, funerals, weddings, every one of them is a crowd being turned into a single unit. Music is not entertainment, it is social technology, which raises a question about the caves themselves. Painted caves are not painted evenly. The art clusters in particular chambers and skips others. For a long time, nobody could say why. Then researchers walked through the caves making sounds, clapping, humming, singing single notes, and mapping where the echo was strongest. The paintings clustered in the most resonant spots. In some caves, red marks appear on bare walls, with no animals painted near them at all, often exactly where the acoustics do something strange. This research is debated, and it should be. Sound is hard to prove from stone, but there is harder evidence in some caves, stalactites that ring like bells when struck. Some carry ancient marks exactly where a hand would strike them. Researchers call these formations lithophones, stone instruments, which means the cave itself was being played. Picture that room, honestly. Total darkness outside a small circle of firelight. Painted animals moving on the walls as the flame shifts. A bone flute, a struck stone, 30 voices in a chamber built to echo. No one in that room had ever heard anything like it before, because nothing like it had ever existed. That was the first concert hall. And the instruments kept coming. In China, flutes made from crane bone around 9,000 years old, several of them still playable when they were found, not fragments. Working instruments, tuned, made thousands of years before writing existed anywhere. which points at something people rarely consider. Before writing, music was not only for feeling, it was storage. Think about the problem a society without writing has. Everything anyone knows lives inside heads. Which plants are poison, where water is in a drought, who your ancestors were, what the law is. Lose the person, lose the information. Plain speech is a terrible container. It drifts every retelling. But melody is a container that resists drift. Rhythm tells you how many syllables belong in a line. Rhyme tells you when a word is wrong. Melody tells you when a whole line is missing. Song is error correction, built thousands of years early, which is why oral epics could run for hours and why they were sung rather than spoken. Everything important was set to a tune because tunes survive. You still use this and you probably have not noticed. How do you recall the order of the alphabet? You do not recite it, you sing it, a melody you learned as a child, still holding data decades later, and music holds on when almost everything else lets go. In people with advanced dementia, language often fails first. Names go, faces go, whole decades go, and then a song from their youth is played, and many of them sing along, every word. Musical memory is stored in ways that resist damage. It is one of the last things a human being holds. Now put that next to the flute again. Whatever music is, it is not decoration. It is closer to infrastructure. It bonded groups too large to bond by touch. It stored knowledge in a world with nowhere to write it. It calmed infants who would otherwise have cried in the dark. So go back to that cave in southern Germany and think about the person who made that flute. We know almost nothing about them. Not their name, not their language, not their face. We know they lived through an ice age, that food was scarce and winters were long, that the average life was short and mostly work, and that they spent hours on a hollow bone, measuring the gaps between holes, testing, adjusting, getting it wrong, starting again, for an object that produced nothing but sound. They were not being frivolous, they were building the thing that held their group together, and every instrument since is a copy of that decision. The lyre, the drum, the violin, the guitar. All of them doing what a vulture's wing bone did first, making air move in a pattern other people recognize. So think again about the song in your head. You did not put it there. You cannot easily remove it. It runs on machinery older than farming, older than any language now spoken, older than every country that exists. It is the oldest piece of software you are running. And notice what happens when a song you love plays in public. You look up. You find out who else knows it. Strangers glance at each other and something relaxes. Nobody taught you to do that. It is a checking mechanism 40,000 years old. It is asking one question, the same one it always asked. Are you one of us? For most of our history, the answer decided whether you ate and whether anyone came looking when you did not return. That is what the flute was for. Not beauty, not showing off, belonging. Music was never the decoration on top of human life. It was one of the things holding it up. The flute is in a museum now, behind glass, silent in a climate-controlled room, 12 pieces of a vulture's wing, put back together. Nobody knows what was played on it. No melody from that world survived. The songs are gone, completely, but the thing that made them is still here. It is in you, running right now, unasked. Somewhere in an Ice Age valley, someone hummed something, and someone else heard it and hummed it back. That is the entire invention. Everything else is detail. 40,000 years of instruments, styles, and empires. All of it downstream of two people making the same sound, on purpose, at the same time, because it made them feel less alone in the dark. And that turned out to be worth more than food, because a person alone in that world did not last long. A group did, and a song was how you built one. Tonight, some song will get stuck in your head again. You will find it slightly annoying. Try to hear it differently for a second. That is not a glitch in your attention. That is a 40,000-year-old system checking it still works, looking for the rest of the group. Somebody carved a bird's wing to make that possible. You have been using it your whole life, and you never once thanked them.